Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's data talks. It's entitled Data and AI for a Sustainable Tomorrow, Strategies and Innovations. My name is David Lundberg, and I will be your moderator today. We have approximately 1.5 hours in front of us of this data talks. We have a packed panel, an exciting keynote today as well in front of us, and we all encourage you throughout to share your questions and answer, and we will have a question and answer session as well. This session today is organized as we are navigating the complexities of climate change. It is more important than ever to harness the power of data and artificial intelligence in our quest for sustainability, and that's why this panel is so timely today. It is organized by the Data Innovation Lab. For those of you who don't know the Data Innovation Lab, it is an innovative collaboration between the German Federal Foreign Office and the GovTech campus in Germany. It's a hub that is serving to create collaborations and to test and refine various policies and use cases formats in the global arena. The overarching objective is the development of data applications, particular to those that can harness artificial intelligence and data, by also upholding ethical principles and contributing to multilateral processes in the world. We have this data talk series that we are here for today that is bringing together leading experts to have dynamic discussions among various stakeholders to see how we can advance these use cases and policies in the space of data and artificial intelligence. That's why I'm very proud to have this distinguished panel with us today and really looking forward to today's discussions. As said, in this edition of the Data Talks, we will delve into the role of data and AI when it comes to the global climate crisis. Our focus is just not on the technological breakthroughs, but also on the policy side, what can be leveraged for sustainable development and climate action. We will, as I mentioned a little bit before, try to break this up into certain parts. We will start with a keynote. We will have a panel with first segment. We'll break in the middle to answer some questions. Then we'll go into the second segment, and then we'll answer more questions at the end. So feel free to share your questions in the Q&A function, and we will get to them as we go along. That was my brief intro. I will be silent. I will try to moderate as effectively as possible. You're here not to listen to me. You're here to listen to our very exciting speakers. So I think we should dive right into it. We will go first with our keynote speech, and that's going to be delivered by Dr. Daniela Brönstrup, who is the Director General for Digital and Innovation Policy at the Germany's Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. Her extensive career spans roles at the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy and the Federal Presidential Office, focusing on digitalization, innovation, and climate-conscious initiatives. For all speakers today, I'm putting in the caveat that I will not go through the full bios. Then I will only be reading bios because people have been doing a lot. With that said, Dr. Brönstrup, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, David Lundberg. And hello and good afternoon at Berlin time, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be part of that distinguished panel today. As David said, I'm in charge of digital and innovation policy at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, and that's why I'm really happy to be part of that panel and this interesting talk today. I'm in charge also with the colleagues from the Ministry for Justice in Germany for the AI Act negotiations, and I'm coming out of that right now. You all know we have been negotiating that important AI Act for 2 years now, and now we are coming to the end. There will be the final vote on Friday in the Council. And yeah, I'm really coming out of those negotiations. And when I'm talking about the AI Act, I always stress first and foremost the chances AI is offering to all of us. And that we have that, hopefully we'll have that important EU framework, legal framework now to really take advantage of all those chances. Because what we need is trust, and we need trustworthy AI to really use AI in the best way we can. And one of the big chances AI is providing is to use it and the lot of data we have to fight climate change. And I have been asked today to talk about what we are doing in the most concrete way I can. And I'm trying to do this, but being brief as well, because I could now come up with a whole long list of projects, and I won't do that today. I pick out some, and I will start with one competition we have, and it's the Green Tech Innovation Competition. And there we ask for projects by companies or by research institutions, and they should provide us interesting new ideas on how to use digital technology to fight climate change and to work for a greener economy. And I've picked out one of those projects we are subsidizing with that competition because it's so German, and I was laughing myself when I saw it. We are helping the green digital twin in the beverage and brewing industry in Germany. What they are trying to do is to use data and AI to have a better database and, let's say, tool to take decisions as having metrics on the resource use in the brewing industry. I think this is one very specific topic, but I found it very interesting, and I'd like to start with that. But that's a whole competition where we pick out interesting new digital ideas to work against climate change. I have a second idea for you, and that are the special projects by our German energy agency. The agency is specialized in everything that has potential to improve energy, the energy transition in Germany. And they have one very interesting project, which is using AI to evaluate and then to optimize the forecast on heat demand in Germany. The aim is to have a very clear forecast on the regional level. For example, they will have several heat pumps integrated into the heating network by the end of 2023, also now. And the data from that heat pumps then will be used to train AI models. The electricity-based generation type will then enable intelligent generator deployment planning to optimize the electricity grid itself, which is an interesting project, I think, to optimize and reduce energy use. I hope I haven't lost you. No, I haven't. Great. Sorry. That is one project which is very interesting. You know, as I'm working for the Federal Ministry in charge not only of economic affairs, but also climate action, we are always trying to combine economic optimization and energy efficiency. So this is what the project is combining. I have a third example for you, because in our view, it's very important to use the innovation potential startups are providing, to combine them with the small and medium-sized companies in Germany. Maybe you know that the German economy is based very much on small and medium-sized companies, some of them very traditional, sometimes talking a different language from the startups that are very innovative and doing a lot for not only the data economy, but also to fight climate change. And we're trying to bring them together and to build a bridge between the startups and the more classical small and medium-sized companies. And we are doing that by our startup initiative and our DE hubs, the so-called German hub initiative. They are bringing them together. And to give you a fourth example, and then I'll stop to give enough room for the discussion, we have all over in Germany our so-called Mittelstand Digitalzentren, the digital competence centers. They are helping to bring together startups and small and medium-sized companies, but especially to train small and medium-sized companies on AI, also with the aim to make them more efficient, but also make them more efficient in using resources to help them to become greener and to foster both the green transformation, but also the digital transformation. We have one special project I wanted to highlight here. They have a development of AI-based sales planning in one competence center in Hanover to avoid food waste. They are working together very closely with the German food industry, and they are trying to economize on resources to avoid that 1/3 of food is wasted sometimes. So there are some highlights of very concrete projects we are subsidizing or we are initiating as a ministry. I have been trying to be very, very concrete, but I'm happy to have your views, and I'm happy to learn from the panel right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brandstrup. That's very, very concrete of you and straight to the point. We really appreciate it, and really thank you for your voice of leadership. I encourage the other panelists to follow that cue and stay on the concrete side of things. We're off to a good start, and also encourage all the participants to, with these concrete examples, really ask concrete questions. What do you want to know more about? With that, we're going to go into the panel segment, and we're going to go to our first set of panelists. First of all, I have the honor to introduce the Chief Sustainability Officer at Microsoft, Mrs. Melanie Nakagawa. She was really at the company's forefront of ambitious sustainability goals. In her previous roles, she served as Special Assistant to President Biden and Senior Director for Climate and Energy at the National Security Council. Today, we really also hope to hear about concrete examples and the strategies that Microsoft are employing to advance sustainability, the SDGs, and to tackle the climate crisis. Over to you, Melanie. The floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I do think that we're off to a great start with incredibly concrete examples. And I think that's really what is so great about what I think we're going to see in today's discussion is we're moving from the theoretical to the actual practical use cases for what we can do with AI. So I'm happy to share a little bit about Microsoft's strategy around AI and then give a couple examples, and then excited to hear from the fellow panelists as well. So at Microsoft, our strategy is really to focus on building solutions, not only for ourselves as we're on our own sustainability and climate journey, but also solutions that enable our customers and partners to lead in climate action and report on their progress. We're also looking to enable the world through inclusive technology to achieve this goal. So at Microsoft, we're building AI solutions to enhance efficiency, optimize business operations, and provide breakthroughs to address sustainability bottlenecks, while also creating new opportunities for our company, customers, and the world. We're doing this by developing the digital and data infrastructure for inclusive use of AI, because data is the currency on which all this AI operates, and it's helping to shape insights, predictions, decision-making capabilities. We're also working to improve data standards, the sharing mechanisms, and platforms to help close the gaps in data access and quality that limit AI's potential for sustainability. We're also advancing AI policy principles and governance by supporting governments that are crafting policies that support the sustainability outcomes while mitigating the resource impacts of AI. And as our previous speaker spoke about on the AI Act, these are, again, the types of policy principles that we're engaging in. We're also particularly interested in broad-scale grid decarbonization and carbon reporting, reduction, and removal policy, while working to strengthen the AI governance that builds trust. And then lastly, and the previous speaker spoke to this as well, we're helping to build a specialized workforce capacity for the use of AI for sustainability. This is including learning pathways that cultivate an AI fluency within the context of sustainability. So with those sort of strategies in mind, we've been specifically working to advance the Sustainable Development Goals and climate action. We have a 20-year history working with the United Nations, including the Secretary General's appointment of our Vice Chair and President, Brad Smith, as one of his SDG advocates. So let me share these 3 examples of how this comes together. The first is an example I'll share with the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's an initiative we launched at the COP28 in Dubai last December around an enhanced transparency framework and global stocktake. One of the things that we talked about is the idea to aggregate and analyze large volumes of data can be complex, it can be time-consuming, and it can be very onerous. And so what we're looking, and it's done through very manual methods. So at COP28, we announced a partnership with the UNFCCC to use AI and advanced data technology to track global carbon emissions and assess progress under the Paris Agreement. Under this agreement, we're going to help build a new platform to provide digital support to the UNFCCC's Enhanced Transparency Framework and create a new AI-powered platform and global climate data hub to measure and analyze global progress in reducing emissions. This will ideally and hopefully dramatically simplify the process to validate and analyze climate data submitted by the 196 parties to the Paris Agreement. When I spent my time in State Department, this was an area where having partaken in this for the US government side, it's a long process and a manual one. So this is a great way to digitize that and inclusively be able to, if it's digitized, help bring in more countries and smooth the process for so many other countries around the world. A second example I'll give is the Early Warnings for All initiative. Microsoft had the honor and privilege to join the Secretary General at the Early Warnings for All roundtable, both at COP27 and at COP28. And this is an effort where you leverage AI and satellite imagery to unlock new insights. And we're partnering with the World Meteorological Organization, the UN Office for Disaster Risk and Reduction, and the ITU to help communities anticipate and adapt to the effects of climate change. As a previous speaker spoke about around heat issues, these are ways you could do this on a more global scale, really understand what's happening with extreme weather events, and be able to provide those insights to the key communities and the vulnerable communities that are out there. And the third example I'll give before I turn to the next is what we're doing on renewable energy. We know we need more renewable energy and faster at scale. We saw commitments last December to triple renewables, double efficiency. So what are the tools and how does AI help address that challenge and that opportunity and that commitment? So one is we're working with partners. Microsoft has mapped the entire world's utility scale solar and wind energy infrastructure. And this is complete with insights about land use change as a powerful tool to help decision makers continue the clean energy transition in a sustainable way. It's really true, you can't manage what you can't measure, and Global Renewables Watch allows policymakers to evaluate the clean energy transition progress and uncover new insights over time. So there's just a few examples to keep with the inspiration part of this discussion.
Thanks a lot, Melanie, for giving us those examples. And I really appreciate bringing in the multi-stakeholder perspective, especially on the early warning side of working with different partners. Also, what has been done in the space of COP and with UNFCCC. I think that's something that I will encourage other speakers to also think about and address, and how can we bring in the multilateral institutions we have. Some other speakers that we hope can add to that as well. So thanks a lot. We'll move on to our next speaker, which is Professor Amy van Wansberg, who's a leading voice in this space as well. She holds the Alexander von Humboldt Professorship for Applied Ethics of AI at the University of Bonn. We hope that she can speak more about what sustainability AI could be and what it is today. I will stop there and go over to you, Professor. Over to you.
Sure, thank you. So sorry to disappoint Melanie, but I'm going to do not so much on the case studies, but I will digress and give a bit of a theoretical talk as a professor. My apologies. And I'd also like to add a twist, I guess, into the conversation, which is always good in a panel discussion. My focus or my emphasis will be on this idea of the green transformation rather than the digital transformation. So my research at the time currently is looking at this idea of sustainable AI. And what I've tried to do is to suggest that there are two branches to sustainable AI, that you have AI for sustainability and you have the sustainability of AI. And so we've heard examples of both of these. And then I am also suggesting that there's much more of a focus on using AI for sustainability than there is on looking into and addressing the issues, the environmental justice issues related to the sustainability of AI. Some of my research is also proposing that can we even speak of sustainable AI without the two branches actually coming together? Is it possible to say that there is such a thing as sustainable AI if we are not at the same time addressing the of issues? When I say of issues, the list goes on, but of course it's energy consumption, carbon emissions, water usage, the mining for precious minerals that are required for this physical infrastructure, land usage, So I can speak about more of those examples, but I won't use that for my 5 minutes. What I want to say, though, is that there's a variety of environmental consequences related to the making and the usage of artificial intelligence. And oftentimes we have a focus right now on energy consumption or carbon emissions without paying attention to the other necessary requirements of the physical infrastructure, the minerals in particular. And it's often hidden demographics that are paying the price for the necessity of us having these minerals, the working conditions, the exploitation of the environment, and what this does to the communities that are surrounding these mining communities that are surrounding the mines. This makes it this impacts the quality of water. This makes the soil also toxic, so it impacts their ability to actually perform certain tasks of agriculture. Also, the consequence of electronic waste. Right? When we're talking about enhancing efficiency, this usually comes with an upgrade in the physical infrastructure. What happens to the previous physical infrastructure? It is often shipped out of the countries that are using this to other countries, creating these massive electronic waste mountains, again, adding to the toxicity in the surrounding area, whether it's the water or the land. So part of my research then is wanting to push for this idea of looking into the hidden costs and the hidden demographics who are related to this sustainability of AI dimension. I would suggest that these costs are not adequately taken into consideration at the moment, and that we do need policy in order to push towards this movement. We need policy in the first step to just sort of uncover the range of issues and environmental justice issues that we're talking about and the stakeholders who are most often impacted. This is a necessary transparency, I would say, for understanding the complexity of the production chain, the production and development chain, as well as the next steps. And when I say next steps, for understanding proportionality, for us to be able to make a statement about under what conditions can we actually justify the making and the usage of AI. So I certainly don't mean to minimize the use of AI for addressing the climate crisis, but under what conditions can we say that this is appropriate? Are we tracking our own carbon emissions and production chain and whatnot as we are using these products to achieve a very timely and important goal? I suggest that this first step of policy to uncover, to begin the tracking, is a necessary first step and must happen before we become locked in to an unsustainable infrastructure when it comes to AI, before we become locked in to companies using or not focusing on renewable energy sources, for example, in their production processes. So transparency needs to come first in order to avoid this lock-in and for us to understand really how complex and to be able to make a decision about when and under what conditions we want AI. My last two thoughts are that I want to share just a fear that I have, is that I worry that the language or the use of AI for climate, AI for good, has a tendency to mask all of the other uses of AI that we see in big tech companies, that there is almost every big tech company has an initiative of AI for society, AI for good, and it almost is a kind of scapegoat or used to justify the benefits, almost to suggest that if we use AI for these ends, these purposes, AI is good. So I hope I make that clear. The last point that I wanted to suggest was following up on Dr. Brunstrup. Right? You had stressed the chances that AI has for us, or when you are in your negotiations concerning the AI Act, you want to stress the chances that AI has for us. And what I would like to suggest is, in my envisioning of what sustainable AI could be, I would like to stress the possibilities that Germany has to be a leader in sustainable AI. And when I say sustainable AI, I mean this coming together of not just AI for achieving sustainability, but also addressing the sustainability of AI. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very interesting intervention, adding a lot to the conversation in terms of what we need to consider going into to the race, if I may say so, that we are currently in when it comes to AI, and people and companies, all stakeholders, I would really say, are trying to latch on and see what we can do with the power of artificial intelligence. There are some really important questions that we need to ask ourselves as societies, as countries, as a global society as well, and I think were very well highlighted in your intervention. So very much appreciate that. We're going to move on to our next speakers to keep on time, and we'll come back during the Q&A and hopefully delve more into these questions. Our next speaker is Philip Tigo. He is a member of the UN High-Level Advisory Body on Artificial Intelligence, the Executive Director for Africa at Van der Burg School of Global Management, and advisor on data and open government for the government of Kenya. His work spans many parts of technology, data, and public policy. And we really would like to hear from you, Mr. Tigo, about what AI and data can be part of shaping the future of governance in Africa, but also across the world when it comes to sustainable development and climate action. The floor is yours. Looking forward to your intervention.
Thank you so much, David, and for the team for having me in the conversation. I'll go very quickly into the talking points. Of course, if you look at the AI landscape, and this is the work that we've noticed in my work in the UN high-level advisory bodies, Africa is really missing the map. So the first point is to ensure that whatever future we are building around artificial intelligence, and if that future is to be inclusive, then I think we need to think about continents like Africa, Latin America, and some parts of Asia. And so as we move forward, of course, artificial intelligence has much greater promise in the African continent. The African Union has begun to build an AI strategy that is very much looking at providing a blueprint for the continent on how AI can be deployed to solve our greatest challenges. What is increasingly, of course, seeing is that as much as AI will depend on issues like compute, talent, or data, these are pieces that the continent of Africa, in most cases, has not built over time. But then the opportunity is to the extent that we can actually leverage on artificial intelligence to be less resource intensive in this development pathway as we move forward, whether it's to build green data centers like what Kenya is doing, how to leverage on renewable energy. As you know, Africa is one of the continents that has that abundance, but also when we talk about talent, we're the youngest continent in the world with a median age of 19.7. And so as we are looking at how we can harness artificial intelligence to the African Union, but also with specific countries, this is the kind of resource we are looking at. The second part, of course, is beyond those three key tenets. There's, of course, a lower layer of what we're increasingly seeing as not having been invested on over time, and thinking through how do we do that. And so the issue of one is basically around data and how that data is produced in accessible, available in the various formats, especially around the Sustainable Development Goals. The issue of internet and broadband in a way that is accessible and usable and free from shutdowns. The third part, of course, is how we are recontouring or re-engineering our entire education system, that we can skill and upskill within this environment of rapid change and uncertainty. The whole issue of agile governance, and this is where a lot of us are spending our time, to the extent that whatever we do and watching what the EU is doing. I've been part of course, President Biden's voluntary commitment and executive order. We've been watching that and part of that conversation, including the UK AI Safety Summit, watching G20 and the Hiroshima process, that Africa should not necessarily be rushing towards legislating, but very much around watching what we can learn from global best practice, but also understanding that there's a potential opportunity in terms of how we can be agile enough to ensure that we can open up collaboration, but then not stifle innovation, and ensure that regulation also provides opportunity for our nascent innovation ecosystem that are startups. And so that's how we're broadly thinking around this, but also executing that now practically. And since we have a lot of practical applications, my role with the President's office was to think about how do we leverage AI to solve not just climate, but also food systems innovation and our agricultural value chains. We launched at COP28 with IBM, the first ever large language model on climate. Of course, with a global collaboration with Mohammed bin Zayed University, And what we've done is looked at how we can use satellite data and Earth observations, working with innovators and government to protect our rangelands and forestlands. And so then working with private sector, because resourcing is always an issue, how can they begin to adopt these forests and rangelands? And then how can policy protect that? But then how can we collaboratively leverage on both carbon, the new carbon economy, to begin to ensure that the core benefit actually can benefit community? Using also AI, for example, to protect the rangelands, whether it's training sensors to listen to voices, how people are cutting forests, or how people should not be in certain parts of the forest, looking at how we can measure the potential carbon potential of these forests, how we can map and measure how communities are consuming firewood and quickly transitioning them into more greener, safer fuels, and we've done that with private sector. And also, how can we ensure that we can measure health outcomes, especially those that come from using dirty fuel, cooking and lighting. And so we've been able, I think, to do that with the presidency, but also bring in private sector, but in the process also being able to green value chains of companies like Diageo, who then require to use a lot of water. And the idea is also, how do we ensure that using AI we can measure how they leverage or how they use water, and so that those water resources are not potentially taken out of communities. Diageo is one of the companies that by now, for example, use less water in their resources, and we're able to use to work with them using artificial intelligence to leverage that. So let me end there, if that's as practical as it can get.
Thanks a lot, Philip. I really appreciate it. And I think there were some very important points there in terms of what is being done both in Kenya, but also in terms of looking at what we can do across regions and across continents when it comes to collaboration on these questions, and also to see what we can do with use cases from the different regions that can also inform policy and work across. So really, it's something that I think we can hopefully dive into when we get to the Q&A. I want to highlight that we have one more speaker before we go into and open up for our first part of Q&A. So I see we have one question already in the Q&A section. We have some persons writing in the chat. Please feel free to take advantage of this opportunity. You see the wealth of experience and ideas that we have in this room on the panelists. So I really encourage everybody to get ready with your questions and already start putting them there. We'll start to sort through them after the next speaker. With that said, we're going to Dr. Robert Wagner, who is the head of the AI and Big Data Lab at the German Environment Agency. Also a breadth of experience when it comes to how to apply technologies for environmental and climate protection, and really underscoring his expertise when it comes to these things, when it comes to data science. Again, we're going to turn to Dr. Wagner to hear about concrete examples of what they have been working on and how their work is advancing sustainability. So without further ado, over to you, Dr. Wagner.
Thanks, David, and thanks all of you for having me here in this quite nice discussion. Actually, it's very hard because so many good points were already mentioned. So I would like to emphasize some points that have slightly missing in my opinion. So I'm the head of the AI lab and Big Data lab. And we are working on the Environmental Agency of Germany, and therefore we have a slightly different perspective, let's say, when we look at AI and the use of AI especially. So on the one hand, it's a tool for us, and on the other hand, it's also a subject of research for us. So when we talk about sustainability, and we talk quite a lot about sustainability these days, you already have mentioned that, there is a question I ask myself, when we are trying to overcome problems by using technology for the last 100 years, and we try to solve it with using even more technology, then there is something strange in my opinion. And what we are interested in is actually the using of AI in a sustainable way, let's say. And this can be done in different ways. It's some sort of a cultural question, let's say, how we are going to use algorithms in the future, how we are using software in a sustainable way in the future. And another aspect is how we do it in a physical way. And there are some very nice approaches also in the way of green AI and green technology, and how to use this, and the combination also with living, working, and using different technology infrastructures. Regarding our team, it's interesting to mention that we are still in the, let's say, development phase of it. We are 25 people right now from different backgrounds, and I spent the last year giving and doing job interviews actually. So what we are trying to do in our lab is creating a holistic view of let's say AI developments, and we do this for the whole federal environmental sector. And the use cases which we are working on comes from a process which we are calling use case discovery. So we invite the people or let them talk to us, and also let them pronounce their problems and their issues they are facing. And what's interesting is that in a lot of situations, people have the feeling that they need AI, and in the end it turns out that they need at some points a better data model. It's another situation they are going to need, let's say, a different data usage, let's say, and at another aspects which are important, then we really use AI. And to give you some insights, we have a use case where we are using satellite images for identifying solar and wind power plants. And what we would like to do actually is to combine them with forecast models of wind and also solar power. And we figured out that in a lot of cases, and when we also would like to increase the speed in using more renewable energy, then you have to know where the power plants are. You have to know where the usage goes in the near future. And as already mentioned, you can't measure, or you can't manage what you can't measure. So you have to know better. And we all would like to save the environment or protect the environment, but to do so, you have to show the people what's going on outside. And that's also a very big motivation for us. And that's why we have set up a team where not only people from, let's say, informatics are working, and we also have people from remote sensing, we have people for AI ethics. And this is very important actually, because at the end of the day, we have quite a lot of software. And in terms of the federal sector, we also have quite a lot of data. And if we want to have trustworthy AI, then we have to use trustworthy data for training the algorithms and stuff. And that's actually is a challenging point, because we have to become better in working with different fields of expertise. And we also have to do better in reusing existing software and technologies. And that's why I'm very happy to can talk to you in this discussion here, because there are a lot of very interesting solutions out there, and at a lot of points people do not know from each other. So this is a very important point I would like to mention here. And when we talk about data talks, we also have to mention that even though the data is available, it's not true that in all cases the data is accessible. And we can't do AI when the data is not accessible. And we also have to talk about bias in the data. And that's why for us, it's important to say a holistic view on the problems and the issues also includes a true and let's say honest interaction with the data which we are using. So that's let's say my 5 or 6 minutes on doing so. And we have different use cases at our lab, which we are working on, and we do it in a prototyping way. So at the end of, let's say, a couple of months, the projects are transferred to the people from science, let's say, or the people from the different agencies. And what we have in mind by doing this is to become more sustainable in developing software. So we would like to have a stack of software where we can reuse algorithms, where we can reuse data sources, where we can reuse APIs. And we would like to encourage people, we would like to involve people, and at the end of the day, we would like to empower people. AI is a very powerful tool, but you have to be aware of the limitations, you have to be aware of the risks, you have to be aware of the, let's say, reliability. And as I mentioned already, trustworthy AI comes from trustworthy data, and that's why we have to do our job, and we have to talk to each other. So that's why I'm very happy to be part of the data talk today.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Very important point. I especially saw a lot of nodding heads around the trustworthy data, but looking out for when it comes to making sure that we are aware of the bias and potential bias in the data and how to deal with that. At this point, we're going to go to Q&A. I see that we have one question already. I will throw in another question, and then I will also give away a bit of my moderating role to you as panelists to bring up things that you have heard from the other speakers that you would like to address and want to maybe feed onto and add to. Because I believe that you, as the experts in this field, probably could pick up nuances and important aspects that maybe people in the audience, I myself could not do. We have our keynote speaker, Dr. Brunstrup. You are here with us still, so I will not put you on a spot, but I will invite you first, after I've read the first question, to come in and either respond to that or feed off the other speakers. For anybody that has not seen, the question that has been put forward is, would any of the panelists have experience, use cases that can be cited in using AI in climate expenditure analysis and facilitating public participation in climate governance? Then it goes into a bit more about how can we use AI and tools to support transparency, public participation, and corruption. So I really think it's about how can we work on that transparency part when it comes to climate governance and also the use of data and AI. My question would be, as we have Philip, we have many people that work across the world, not only in Germany, and this is the data talks of the Data Innovation Lab that is from the Foreign Office. How can we collaborate across regions? How can we really make use of cases both from Kenya, other parts of Africa, other parts of the world, and in Germany? How can we feed off each other and collaborate to make sure that we address the important points of both moving forward, but for doing so in a responsible, sustainable, and ethical way? So I throw that in for anybody if you feel that you have it in you to address it. But first of all, we go to Dr. Brunstrup. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would like to come back to 2 points Professor van Wijnsberg made, and also to Robert Wagner, because I think I was called concerning your point on politics and the need for political action. I think you're completely right. What we need is metrics to be able to take informed decisions. And that's what we are doing also with our competition I mentioned earlier. We are also subsidizing projects who are trying to improve metrics we already have, to give then people the possibility to take informed decisions. So that is one important point. And what I'm pushing myself very much is the digital product passport. I think that is a very important project. We are debating that in Europe on the eco-design directive right now, but I think it should be a project that is horizontally all over all sectors and all products established, at least in Europe, but hopefully worldwide. Because I think that is the essential part to really have a circular economy in the next phase. And I would secondly come back to Robert Wagner on the important point of transparency and data accessibility. What we are trying to build up right now in Germany is the so-called Data Institute, because we have realized as well that there are a lot of data silos and that there are a lot of data treasures that aren't used because they are not either accessible or not compatible with other data. And what we are trying to do there is to bring those data together and to make them compatible and accessible. And we have 3 first projects right now. One is, for example, on energy and energy usage, and the second one is on data on post-COVID studies. We try to bring them together to come to better conclusions and to make them also, let's say, worthy for new AI projects. And Professor van Wijnsberg, you made a very important point mentioning that we need the sustainability of AI, and that's important. When I'm talking to AI companies right now, a lot of them tell me, well, you know, yeah, we have those big large language models, but size is only one side of the coin. And the other side is that there are a lot of new AI models coming up that are working on very specific tasks, being smaller and not consuming so much energy and not using so much compute power than the bigger models do. So that's a very important point, and I think there are a lot of projects going on that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Some very important points that I think that others can add to as well. I think we'll go to Melanie. If you want to add to any of these points, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I think one of the questions that was raised, I think it's the second one, where the role of governments and policies and what we can do to drive action, but how does data and AI effectively be used in governance structures to enhance decision-making processes? For that one, I'd respond in two ways. One is the work that we're doing with the UNFCCC is a great example of how do you take all the actions that countries are doing on transparency around their carbon reporting and get that into negotiators' hands in real time, where you have a model that can be queryable and understood sort of in real time when it comes to the emission trajectories of key countries. But another one, and I know that I think she's not on this session of the panel, but I see she'll be up next, is my colleague from the UN Environment Program, Sally, where I'll briefly touch on just one of the initiatives that we've been working on together in a collaboration that we showcased last December at COP, which is around a topic called Environment GPT. And really what this is it's a ability, it's a partnership with UNEP where we work to develop a method to build a digital public good that expands access to the latest scientific research related to environmental issues, and it generates the context and country-specific insights based on this science, and enables a greater understanding by decision makers, policymakers, students of what the interconnections are and the trade-offs between these goals. And so this is really a tool that's going to help environmental managers and practitioners in both government and business to easily access the most authoritative science that comes out of the UN that's out there. It also allows scientists and specialists to deliver environmental assessments more rapidly and track their progress against those commitments more easily. And it also helps us better address misinformation and disinformation. So this is just an example of how language models can be used to bolster quality and trust in climate science and close the gap between the science and policy action that's out there that we know we need to see given the urgency of the crisis. So that's just another example of ways that these tools that can simplify complex data and information like climate science, how you can use these tools to better educate decision makers that have so many things on their plate at a given time. This is large language models are a great opportunity to be able to close that gap and help in the governance and regulatory frameworks to improve those by informing them with the best available science, but also by informing them with a greater understanding of the voluminous amount of regulation and disclosures that are out there, so that we actually get better corporate reporting, better data, and better governance systems in place. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Melanie. With that, we go over to Professor van Wansberg. I see the gentlemen are very keen to get in, but you'll have to go to her.
Yep, I wanted to respond to Dr. Brunstrup's further information that you gave, that there are projects looking at this branch. I'm really happy to hear that. And it's amazing, even trying to get to know all of the projects, there's still things that slip through the cracks. So I'm really happy to hear that, especially about the digital product passport that you had mentioned. And I will look further into that. I just wanted to also put it on the table that I work closely with the University of Ghana. So here in Bonn, I run the Bonn Sustainable AI Lab, and I work closely with the University of Ghana, and we have researchers who come and stay at our lab for a year and do research and also bring their insights and their ethical traditions. So it's looking at non-Western ethical approaches, which are very much embedded into the AI Act. It's the Western ethics that we have. I worked on the high-level expert group, so I understand where some of these thoughts were coming from. But with these researchers, we learned, firsthand about the mining conditions and how do we think about sustainable mining practices for the future. We also learned about the female perspective and how it's often the female populations in Ghana in particular who are the first ones to be impacted by the climate crisis, and what this means for them and how they are absent from the conversation about AI. They don't have the same opportunities for education and whatnot. So I just say that also to say that we are here, as a resource, if you're ever interested in sort of broadening the conversation and learning about what we are doing that might play a role or could be relevant for the digital product product passport. I'm just saying that, yeah, I'm here and we're all here if you're interested.
Thanks a lot. Great to hear that there are collaboration across regions, that you also have things that can be applied and can be used by people in this room. So hopefully that leads to collaboration. We go to Philip. The floor is yours. Come in with your insights.
Thank you so much. And I think I'll deal with two parts. My role is, of course, open government, and Kenya now is a global chair of the Open Government Partnerships. That's about 120 subnational governments and 79 countries. In our co-chair role, the first thing, of course, we're looking at is very much in the understanding that the current global governance system is very fragmented. And as I was mentioning, the various initiatives, whether it's Hiroshima, G20, G7, the EU AI Act now, the US executive order, is that it's very fragmented. And so I think the first part is to ensure that we have a global approach to this. And that is why I think the United Nations still remains the best placed body to do that. Whether it will create something new or something else, I think the UN has to be at the center of it, is if we have to have a sort of an inclusive digital future. I think that's my first point. Then in terms of practical experience around transparency and accountability, especially in one area that we're looking at around climate, of course, is the carbon economy. And as you know, the market is really a voluntary market right now. So we're experimenting with a startup called Amini using blockchain and AI, of course, with Aeon and UNDP Crisis Bureau to focus on how do we ensure that we have transparency around carbon credits so that where it's paid, it actually lands in the hands of a woman on the ground. So that's something that we want to see, still early stage, and hopefully we can share that best practice. Quickly, I think we cannot link digital when you talk about policies. We can't link, for example, digital transformation, artificial intelligence. I think sometimes we kind of have to think about that holistically. So it needs to be across the value chain. It has to be a mix. And this is what we are learning, especially for emerging economies. It has to be a mix of soft regulations because we are ideating with voluntary commitments from companies. And I know I'm working with colleagues from Microsoft because we do not necessarily own this stuff. But I think there has to be also in a way that these global regulations also ensure equity. Things like compute power, for example, at this time, are concentrated amongst the very few. So as much as regulation can be voluntary, also how do we ensure that it's just not about technology transfer, it's also about technology cooperation, so that compute can also be accessible to economies like ours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Philip. With that, we'll go over to Dr. Wagner before we head over to the next part of the, over to you.
I try to be quick. As it was mentioned, we talk a lot about the footprint, the current footprint of training AI models and data, but we also have to keep in mind that the influence is also worth thinking about. And in a lot of cases, when it comes to, let's say, climate applications or environmental applications, it's more or less focused on forecasting or nowcasting. So those models are going to be used every day, every week, every month, or whatsoever. So when we talk about the product path or the, let's say, the footprint of a model, then we also have to take into account that we are going to use it. And when it's a successful model, let's say, it will be used plenty of times. So this is also important to know, and I would like to advertise a little bit the environmental agency in this case, because there is, in German, it's quite well known. It's a blue environmental star. It's similar to the energy star in the US, the blue environmental angel. And this is also, this was done for quite a lot of products, and also in particular for computation centers. So, which is very interesting actually to have a look on that. And what I also would like to mention regarding the questions which were raised in the chat, there are a few citable projects already, and sometimes it's hard to believe, but there is a Git repository for governmental projects, for federal governmental projects from the German side. And at least it applies to us as the AI Lab. We have the plan to make our developments publicly available as possible. So there are some efforts, some approaches on that, but only if you, to be honest on that, to answer that question.
Thanks a lot.
Maybe just a small add on that. There is an API available from the German Environmental Agency, also from other European environmental agencies regarding air quality. And what we are doing right now in one use case is using this particular data, which is also historical data for several decades, to check if political measures have impact on the air quality. We have the pandemic, there was a lockdown, and we are investigating, okay, how can we measure the impact on local air quality parameters, let's say. And this is something which is particularly interesting because the data for air quality is actually publicly available all over Europe. And this is a very nice approach, actually, also to engage or to motivate people, have a look on publicly available data and work with that and work on that, because this is trustworthy data, actually. And I just want to highlight that because I really like the API.
Thanks a lot. I think that is a great addition. We will move on to our next speakers. We have 3 more speakers that are kind of come in and add their perspectives to the topic. We're not switching topic. We're staying on the same topic. This, as said in the beginning, is our first session on this topic. So it's broad, it's a lot to digest, but hopefully we can have many ideas of how we can take this forward in many different directions after this session. With that said, we're going over to Sally Radwan. It's already been teased a little bit that Ms. Radwan is going to speak. She's the chief, the digital officer at the UN Environmental Program. And we hope that she can speak about both the opportunities and challenges that comes with using big data and AI when it comes in the UN system, the UN system's role in applying these things. So without further ado, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. I think everything's been said, so I'm not sure what I can add, but let me try to add maybe a few things from the UNEP perspective. So as you may or may not know, the UN Environment Program is the agency or the program that tackles environmental issues within the UN. And we also host most, if not all, of the conventions, the UN conventions related to environment. And there are many, by the way, so Climate COP is not the only COP that takes place every year. There are many, many others that are worth looking into. And so the idea that that we rally around is what we call the triple planetary crises, which we define as climate change, of course, is an issue for everyone. But then we have 2 other pillars, namely biodiversity, which is protecting nature, preventing deforestation, and so on. And then the third one is pollution, chemicals, extractives, mining, and all these kinds of things. So these are our 3 pillars. And within the digital transformation function at UNEP, we look at enabling, of course, all 3 of them, but always keeping in mind what we call the 2 sides of the coin, or what the EU calls the twin transition, which is something that Amy also referred to in her talk, which is looking at how do we deploy digital technologies, including AI, but really any digital technology, to help our environmental goals, but at the same time, how do we ensure the environmental sustainability of these digital technologies themselves? And this happens or covers both direct and indirect consequences. So when we look at, and I'm glad Amy mentioned that, greenhouse gas emissions are not the only thing to worry about. When it comes to the footprint of digital technologies, we have resources, natural resources, we have chemicals, we have rare earth metals and minerals, we have e-waste, we have water consumption, we have many, many things. So covering those, but also covering things like misinformation and disinformation as one of the drawbacks of digital technologies on the environment, especially in the climate space, where we're really suffering from this wave of misinformation and disinformation. And so everything that I'm going to say, and I'm going to quickly give 3 examples of our work, will always look at things from these two sides of the coin. So one thing I'll mention is what Melanie already mentioned, actually, which is environment GPT. So one of the main drawbacks of large language models, as we know, or especially as of ChatGPT and similar generative AI applications, is the issue of hallucination. And that's because it's trained on basically everything it can get its hands on, or its creators could get their hands on. Sometimes a bit controversially, but that's another topic. But that, of course, makes it very difficult to dive into one domain and get authoritative information or an authoritative response to your question. And of course, we could talk for hours about the impression that generative AI models generate with people, and this is actually a fascinating topic, with the language that they use and the assertiveness with which they speak or communicate with people, indicating that this model really knows what it's talking about, when actually it has no idea what it's talking about whatsoever. And so this is one thing that I think there's a lot of awareness building and capacity building needed to make sure that people have the right expectations of what these applications can and cannot do. But like I was saying, so hallucination is an issue, but also, as I was just saying, misinformation and disinformation, especially in the environmental domain, are a big problem for everyone. And so we're working, as Melanie said, with Microsoft to pilot this environment GPT application, which is trained on a very well-curated corpus of research reports and research output that UNEP basically authorized. And so, and when it gives answers, and at the moment it only covers climate and air pollution, and we're expanding it slowly to other domains, but when it gives answers, it also references where the answer comes from. And when there are two slightly contradictory answers to the same question, which happens a lot in the environmental domain, then you get both answers with both references as well, so that you know where your answer is coming from. You're sure that there's no hallucination, and there's even a link to the report or the website or the source where this came from. So this is one of the examples that we're working on. Another thing we're doing is we're working in many ways to tackle the environmental footprint of digital technologies. We're now embarking on an effort to review national digital transformation strategies. Unfortunately, very few of them talk about environmental sustainability as a priority or at all, let alone try to quantify it or try to, as we always say, link the environment agenda with the development agenda, which is super important, especially for countries in the global south that really need to prioritize their development goals, and environment needs to go hand in hand with that. I'm pleased to say that Germany is one of the few that actually do mention sustainability and have an interesting experience in that regard, which we're hoping to learn from. We're also working to promote green consumption or sustainable consumption on e-commerce platforms, both through working with companies, so things like the digital product passport, which we're working on with the EU, but also things like working with influencers on social media platforms to ensure that green products are prioritized and that their value is communicated properly through these influencer channels, which are very important to the younger generations. Two other quick things I'll mention very, very briefly. A very important thing that I think Philip touched on as well is data governance. So, of course, we care about environmental data specifically. So we have an initiative called the Global Environmental Data Strategy, which is an initiative targeted at ensuring that environmental data is, first of all, interoperable, exchangeable between countries and between different stakeholders, so you can actually build and generate richer and better insights out of it. But not only interoperability, quality is a huge issue. Not so much or not only the actual quality of the data, but also who gets to give the stamp of approval to say that a certain data set is valid for a certain application. And then, of course, issues of governance and the all-important access and affordability for all, so justice around data. And then the last thing I want to mention is all of these things. So AI applications with environmental data, we're putting them together into a platform that we call the World Environment Situation Room, which is currently in proof of concept stage, but we are building it into a full-fledged data platform that will allow the merging of different data sets from different domains. So not just environment, but also socioeconomic data, development data, financing data, and so on, so that we can generate, with the help of AI as well, things like forward-looking scenarios, like calculation of the potential impact and cost of certain policy interventions, and so on. So lots going on. I hope I didn't go on for too long, but back to you, David. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sally. Certainly not a lot going on, as you said, and a lot to be highlighted. So I think that there will be also space to share more in the Q&A section. Also a very good job of linking it in with other examples that have been brought up by colleagues in the first segment. With that, we go over to Leonida Mutuku, who is the founder and CEO of IntelliPro, and also is working with Local Development Research Institute, LDRI, to further research on data and AI. I will stop there. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and hello all, and thanks for having me in this session. I will mainly speak on the work we do at LDRI. I lead the Accountable and Inclusive AI practice area. We mainly work with governments to eradicate extreme poverty through data-driven interventions in food and security and nutrition security, and support data policies that address inequality in society. At LDRI, we aim to offer technical assistance, support in the development of standards, norms, and operating frameworks, as well as surface evidence from our work that influences how policies are made. In this session, I will highlight a couple of ongoing initiatives that we have and showcase how this approach comes full circle. With the generous support of GIZ, LDRI has developed an AI early warning system that monitors farming activities in various agriculture productive regions in Kenya and supports climate-smart precision agriculture practices amongst smallholder farmers. So our main constituents here are smallholder farmers. Our AI mainly predicts crop yields, crop stress, and the likelihood of crop failure by detecting area under cultivation in these counties, diseases, pests, and malnutrition from images taken and in some instances labeled in local language by the farmers, as well as Earth observation data. This project surfaces evidence on food and nutrition security in near real time in these regions by providing intelligence on what climate-smart crop varieties thrive in these regions, and data for extension support to ensure farmers harvest a productive yield that keeps their household food secure and have some leftover to sell commercially, even with the uncertainty of weather conditions due to climate change. As you can see, this intelligence is really valuable in informing proactive government policies to support food security and nutrition, specifically looking at examples such as what inputs regional governments should be subsidizing in their next budgets, whether locally produced food meets regional nutritional demands, or what actions government can take to ensure availability of diverse produce from other regions to meet local demands, as well as offer data for recommendations for advisory that local agriculture officers can offer smallholder farmers to save their crop and increase productivity. Amongst this, the evidence we collect from implementation projects such as the early warning system, but also other data initiatives we have going on at LDRI, enable us to provide technical support to the public sector to adopt frameworks, standards, norms for accountable and inclusive implementation of AI, as well as open data initiatives. So over the last 10 or so years, we have worked with various government institutions across the continent and in some instances, Latin America, as well as Southeast Asia, to conduct data capacity assessments, including supporting them to assess whether they have and what are the right policies in place to enable cross-government access to open data for planning, especially issues that are intersectional and require data from various government ministries and departments. For instance, when we look at an issue such as food and nutrition, it is cross-cutting with health, it's cross-cutting with gender aspects, because in our use case, women tend to be the the producers of food and providers of nutrition for families, even if they're male-led households, as well as looking at sources of energy and across the board education. Through our technical assistance, we have also helped public institutions assess their human resources and capital to procure and adopt data systems, including their own ability to produce and utilize data, how to sustainably finance these initiatives, and how to engage the public on their data rights and their representation in these data systems. More concretely, we co-chair and provide thought leadership for Goal 2, Zero Hunger, under the SDG Forum of Kenya. Together with other civil society partners, we support the Kenyan government through national voluntary reviews to measure progress in achieving the SDG goals, targets, and indicators, and use our experience and data from our AI early warning system, farmer field schools, and other implementation activities to contribute to citizen-generated data on progress, gaps, and insights on best practices towards accelerating the achievement of these goals. And we're happy that this year, some of our work will towards Goal 2 will be presented by the national government at the high-level political forum in New York. And I'll stay on, of course, looking forward to further engagements and speak more specifically about how we continue to support governments and public institutions to use data and AI. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leonida, and thanks for those concrete examples from a different angle and a different perspective coming in that I think have added a lot to what has previously been mentioned, also on the dimension of collaboration across regions with partners from Germany, but also in the international multilateral space. With that, we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is Professor Dr. Lynn Kack, who is the Assistant Professor of Computer Science and Public Policy at the Hertie School in Berlin, and also the co-founder of Climate Change AI. We have asked Professor Lynn Kack to focus a bit more on the academic research in AI and how that can contribute to climate change and policies and government-led climate action. Without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I have the honor to be the last one here, and we actually heard about a lot of great examples that illustrate how you can apply machine learning and AI for policy making. So I hope that this is what I have to say is still interesting, but I'm trying to give a bit of an overview of how we can think about these technologies in the context of policy. So essentially, there is a lot of information available out there that could help us theoretically with policy making, but typically these data have been difficult to analyze in a computerized way with traditional methods. And I'm speaking, for example, of image data or large text corpus with like a lot of documents that we have. And we typically had to go in manually and analyze these images or these texts by just coding them or annotating them manually. And machine learning and AI can extract information from these data sets automatically and also at much larger scale because it lowers the cost of analyzing these. So one example, text plays a huge role for policymaking, and we have large databases with thousands of documents. In one of the projects that I looked or worked on, we were interested in how companies talk about climate risks. And we had, we sampled a database of thousands of corporate annual reports. And then instead of going through all of these thousands of documents, which are hundreds of pages long, manually, we labeled a few of them and then trained a machine learning algorithm label the rest of it automatically. And this way we could actually understand how a large number of companies are talking about climate risk, and if the number of mentions of climate risk is increasing over time. And this helps approaches like these that can help with analyzing, for example, if policies are effective after they come into place. AI or machine learning can also help to enforce policies. So for example, if we are monitoring with the help of satellite images, how forests get deforested in an illegal manner, we can monitor a much larger area and help guided enforcement of policies here. We can also use such approaches for planning new infrastructure. For example, we could understand better where people are biking in a city to prioritize new cycling infrastructure. That's something that a PhD student in my group is working on, for example. So since part of the question was how can academia actually come in here, I thought of 3 ways that I see academia's role in this type of work. So academia is there to develop new methods, not only on the AI side, but also methods of how we can use machine learning in this kind of policy research or in policy work. And that is typically point 2, by creating proof of concepts of machine learning applications. So one essentially shows that an idea of a novel approach is possible. And the third point is in academia, we have more time to analyze questions and potentially less interest or conflict of interest to analyze questions that otherwise wouldn't be asked. So there's a bit of more freedom to explore new directions. And then part of the question was also if there are areas that specifically hold a large potential. And I always find that really difficult to answer, but I think what became clear also in today's discussion and what also aligns with what my research is focusing on is that machine learning is really good in providing new information for policymaking. So this like creating information aspect, I think, is really relevant here. And that let it be by using text analysis, I mentioned that before, or by providing monitoring tools in especially the area or the field of remote sensing is an important area here for policymaking. And we already heard numerous examples before. All of these are application areas, but also in machine learning research, interesting developments that academia is contributing to this area. So for example, a colleague of mine is looking how you can integrate decision analysis with machine learning models. So you actually try to bring the decision-making criteria into the model already in order to improve the way it's functioning. And she's applying this to power sector problems, but this is really cutting edge machine learning research. So there are also policy relevant things happening in that area. All of the solutions that we introduced today, they are really great ideas, and they can potentially really help us with policymaking. But often they still exist as prototypes or only in research. So we really need to work hard now to try to deploy these solutions. And some of the initiatives that were introduced today are, I think, on a really helpful path to deploying more of these solutions. But it gets difficult. So for example, I think something that was mentioned before by Melanie is tools that Microsoft is developing, for example, to detect solar PV around the world. And from research, we've learned that is still quite difficult. So I'm actually very excited to see that there's more initiative in this. And I'm really also looking forward to seeing how some of these problems and challenges that machine learning is still facing have been solved there or will be solved. So overall, I think that machine learning is an attractive set of methods for policy analysis and governance. And I hope I gave some food for thought for the discussion now.
You
Thanks.
certainly did. That said, we have had all our speakers. We're going to our last round of question and answer. I don't see that much stuff coming in the Q&A, so I will read the one that has come in, that came in sort of at the transition, and then we'll go around of the speakers of Sally, Leonida, and Professor Kak to give some reflections. And also we have some of the speakers that have already part of the first segment can come in again, the ones that are still with us. Some had to run off to other obligations, but I invite you to raise your hand and also come in on these points that have been made as well. So the second question that came in was, how can data and AI be effectively integrated into governance structures to enhance decision-making process, and what regulatory frameworks or standards do you believe should be in place to ensure the responsible and equitable deployment of these technologies for environmental stewardship? Also, feel free to answer them directly in the Q&A section if you don't want to address them in your intervention. With that, we're going to Sally. Try to keep it 1 to 2 minutes, your reflections, and also answer to the questions. Over to you.
Me first? Okay, thank you. So I think Philip is probably better positioned to answer this than I am, because he sits on the UNSG's advisory board for AI, and who are busy trying to come up with a new governance model for AI globally. And I think it's a much needed effort. Over the past few years, as most of you probably know, there have been several attempts, including one that I participated in myself, which was the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. Now, the problem was that it was like many documents issued by the UN, unfortunately, it was non-binding. It did get endorsement from all UN member states, which is good. But it was also a set of principles and policy recommendations rather than actual action. So I think what we need now is exactly what Philip and colleagues are working on, which is moving to the more actionable stage of that. What are the standards that we need to adopt? What are the actual, prescriptions, as some of the member states put it, that we need to actually enforce these principles in daily lives. So I think let's wait until the effort by the UN has concluded and see what we can do in the global space. Personally, I think, of course, it's important to make sure that we understand that the world is not one unit. There are major differences across regions and sometimes across countries, and also across sectors of application of AI. And that needs to be taken into consideration as we develop these standards and methods. But yeah, maybe Philip can elaborate more on this, or someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. We're gonna give Philip a little bit of reading room, so he can come in. But we go to Leonida first for any additions from her, and then we'll move on to Professor Kak, and then we'll see if Philip wants to come in. I see he's here and he's laughing, so he feels a bit put on the spot. Maybe over to you, Leonida.
Thank you so much. So for us, in order to assess how data, more specifically and moving forward, AI should be adopted in governance and policy making, one thing that is necessary is for the public sector itself, the government institution, to actually have a policy that outlines what functions have been mapped, what data is being produced that could ideally support decision making across these functions. How is that data produced, frequently or not frequently, and what other gaps need to be met in terms of data availability in order for those specific functions to work properly. And these policies also will define, the engagements that government, as I mentioned earlier, have with other departments, as in the case where some of these issues are intersectional. Additionally, I think there is a need on clarity on what decisions that are made on behalf of citizens by government can be automated, what data would train those decision models, what bias may exist, or who is being left out behind by the current data that is likely to create these AI algorithms or automated decisions that would ideally be made by a government function on its people, and how to ensure that then those, let's say, avenues to exacerbate inequalities that exist offline are not exacerbated when some of these functions are automated or AI systems are introduced as part of either government delivery efficiency. So I think for me, those two are really key. Secondly, thinking about especially when you talk about responsible, we need to talk about how, again, how is everyone counted in these systems? Because everyone has a right to be represented in data and to be represented in systems. But at the same time, they need to be able to understand those decisions in a language that makes sense to them, that they have provided their informed consent, or that there are avenues to opt out of these decisions that are made by automated systems. And so I think in the short term, because of those like lack of trust issues, lack of trust in data quality, and other kinds of decision making, including who is participating in the creation of these AI systems. Are they representative of the local communities who ultimately these government-driven AI initiatives will make? So in the absence of clarity on all that, or full trust in that, I think there still should be some human in the loop elements to AI, to data-driven decision-making when it comes to government institutions and policies that are data-driven. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leonida. We'll go to Professor Kak for her reflections as well. Over to you.
I'm also happy to give the word to Philip. We only have one more minute.
Everyone will hear from Philip because he's on the panel. But we go to you first, and then we'll use the liberty of moderation to give Philip a chance, and also Dr. Wagner as well if he wants to come in. So over to you.
I will try to be quick. So I wanted to speak about local governments, like municipal governments in particular, which is like a whole different set of stakeholders, I would say, when it comes to applying machine learning, because often local governments, they don't actually have the resources and the capacities to deploy or to build up AI or machine learning teams. And still, there's a large potential for using these technologies in cities. You can optimize like urban infrastructure, for example, so district heating and cooling systems. You can also understand emission sources better. You can design new neighborhoods with the help of machine learning. And there are actually programs like AI for Cities that was funded by the EU that are really dedicated to how cities can deploy machine learning for the purpose of addressing climate change. One of my PhD students worked for this program before, and now is really looking into exactly those kind of questions. How can cities prioritize between approaches to understand what are effective approaches and in solving their problems? Who can they partner with when they're developing these machine learning approaches? And how can we develop best practices and recommendations of learning from the existing projects that are being deployed around the world? And she's particularly also looking at Europe. So that's my perspective on this problem. But it's an interesting question.
Certainly. Thanks a lot. And with that, we're gonna go to Philip. Philip, if you don't mind sharing a few thoughts, please share. Last points. Over to you.
No problem. Sally's just being mean. She and I, of course, work on something else on digital and the coalition on digital and environmental sustainability. I think there's what the Secretary General, I think, recognized, I think, over time is that everybody kind of know these things, but the problem is that we needed a global consensus. And beyond that, we need some institutional hardness, right? So to the extent that you need something that is resilient, that can create this platform for convergence, as much as an understanding that artificial intelligence is not static, it's kind of moving very quickly. And so when you think about global governance, it's very much around functions, and how those functions kind of can be very much around principles. So things around norms and collaboration, things around reporting and peer review, things around, for example, being very focused around principles that I agree, like human rights as the basis where somebody's talking about ethics, responsibility, things about ensuring that we can begin to answer the larger questions around cross-border kind of model training and data, things around interoperability, but also being able to sort of scan the horizon. And perhaps the most difficult part, which is I love when academics are in the room, is building scientific consensus. and when you do that, it means that you do not necessarily create something new. It's very much around what is working within the larger system. And I'm giving you a sneak peek of our thinking is very much looking at the UNFCCC model, and that becoming something that we can potentially build on. And so that when we get to September, which if many of you do not know, is Summit of the Future, but also we are working towards a global digital compact. And that becomes in the scenario where we potentially unveil what this body is looking at as that new framework where we can potentially govern artificial intelligence.
Thanks a lot, Philip. Dr. Wagner, any last thoughts? Over to you.
A short last note on that. Leonida mentioned it already. For the near future, I only see when it comes to governance and decision-making aspects that there is always a man in the loop. Because when you think about environmental data is sparse data. So this we have to take into account, and we are facing that. So we can't say that we hit more than we miss in terms of governmental aspects. So there will be an issue that we have to work on, that some models which are available are not applicable or not usable for us right as they come from the repositories. So there we have to put some effort into it, and that's what I would like to mention on this point. So there is still a lot to do, but we are making progress, and that is good for us because we have to do at least some years until our retirement. So therefore, I'm looking forward to to have a lot to do in the next years.
Thanks a lot. That brings us to an end. We have concluded our session today. I think we have failed to end on time by a few minutes. That is what happens when you give the moderation to a Swede instead of a German. So I guess that's the fault of myself, but also others, to appointing me to this position of moderator of today's session. But I think we have succeeded in having a very interesting, very broad, but also specific, in some cases, discussion about what data and AI can be and can do for sustainability. This is, as said in the beginning, a first discussion on this topic that we're doing within the Data Talks format. I hope that we can come back again with our distinguished panelists and others and dive deeper into certain aspects of data and AI for sustainability. It is certainly needed. There's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of potential, there are a lot of opportunities, but it also comes with responsibilities to do so in a very ethical and transparent way, while also tackling the challenges that we have ahead of us, because we are facing a climate crisis. With that, I thank everybody, thank all our speakers, thanks all our participants for joining us, and I conclude the session. Thanks a lot and have a good day.